From tested.
And the time has come. The trifecta is upon us.
That's right.
We have 3 major VR headsets launched, and today...
First there was the Rift, then the Vive, am I right on the
That's
order?
right.
And now we finally have the PlayStation VR.
Formerly known as Project Morpheus.
Morpheus.
I actually like that name a little better. Today we'll be talking mostly about the hardware. PSVR, of course, launches October 13th. We've had early access. Sony sent us a review unit, so we've had it for about a week now. We haven't had a chance to play all the launch titles, and many still are just going gold right now, but the games that we've had access to, I think are pretty good for us to...
So you can easily detach the headset from your cable in the breakout box and store that somewhere, but that does mean more connections. So there's just a few extra things to get in
your body or have it hang. You can remove the headset.
The other guys went
It's elastic, so like the Oculus, it actually, you can expand it,
right,
and it fits over your head, but at this point, the headset itself, the display, is never touching my face. There's a button underneath it, and I can hold the...
that controls volume for the headphone jack. So it's a lot like the Vive in that sense. There's no built-in headphones into the device like there is in the Rift, but you can plug headphones directly into this, or just use the audio on your TV, because it's constantly mirrored.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, and even with the audio and TV, if you have a living room setup, I think it's one of the advantages of PSVR. A lot of people have their PS4s in living room.
Talk about the Move ones. You still have a controller that's tracked, and they can still telegraph information to the user about what buttons do what in an actual virtual environment, which is very useful.
Yeah, some of the games show a perfect representation of the PS4 DualShock controller in the game world. Some do a stylized version. For example, Super Hypercube shows like a holographic version, which is actually bigger than this controller is in real life. Like, scale can be messed with, even with the shape of the controller. And some games, knowing where your hand position is in the controller, in the video game space, can do things like put your hands in handcuffs, or, holding the reins of a horse while using the controller. I found that I didn't actually look at the controller much in the games to look at where the buttons are to see, but just having that additional tracking point increased the immersion.
Right, and lowers the kind of motion sickness factor.
Yeah. So the other controllers are the PS Move controllers.
Yeah, they brought them back. These haven't been really used in a while.
Like 2010 is when they were first released. But they work. I mean, they're motion controllers, positionally tracked. Each of them, they have the light at the top for each of them. They're in different colored lights. You can use them as analogs for grabbing, hand presence, technically. Ergonomically, it has that same phenomenon that the Vive controllers have, where if you try to hold it like a pistol, it doesn't exactly work, because you want to hold it like that and aim forward like a phaser. So when you hold it like a pistol, the trigger isn't perfectly ergonomic to hold it like a pistol.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't have a problem with that so much. Every game has a different approach to how they're going to position the virtual object around your hand. And I felt like they did a pretty good job. That's really going to be up to the software developers to decide how they employ this.
And while there are technically side buttons on the PS Move for select and start or share on the PS4, there's no grip action on those side buttons. Most of the games for grip, you just press the top button as your action, your grip, and then use the trigger, the T button for firing a gun or something.
Yeah. The nicest thing about this is some people already have them, so there's less cost of entry to getting into VR.
Right.
In a different position. Now that's almost okay. I can live with that. It's when the headset loses tracking that causes a motion sickness problem, and that's the real concern. Now that's almost okay. I can live with that. It's when the headset loses tracking that causes a motion sickness problem, and that's the real concern, because motion sickness is the thing that everyone's trying to avoid in VR, regardless of the platform.
And I think we're talking about two different types of tracking, maybe failures with the controllers and the headset. Like you said with controllers, you could be holding the Move controllers perfectly still, but then or even the PS4 DualShock controller, but on the on-screen representation of it, and in the headset, you'll see it jitter or even drift And if you occlude the light, that orb, on the controllers, then it actually completely loses tracking or relies on the IMU, the gyroscope inside.
It was always with a standing game, and I would go as far to say I don't think that this lends itself to room scale at all. This is standing only. You're not supposed to walk with the PSVR. You're not supposed to move through space. This is standing only, and that's when it happened the most. If I were to sit down and play Battlezone or any other game, even the Batman game has a sitting mode.
Super Hypercube, Thumper, and even Battlezone VR were wonderful to play. Cockpit games. In PSVR Worlds, which is their sampler pack, they're equivalent to the lab for Vive, except they charge for it or get it in the bundle.
Right.
It gives you a whole range of type of experiences they've already been doing, from your passive story-based experiences, narratives that kind of like Disneyland rides, except interactive, semi-interactive, to full cockpit shooters. I think the cockpit games really work for me in PSVR.
Oh my gosh, I mean, cockpit games are a natural fit for VR because they give you the ability to move through the world, but they also give you a sense of reference for your own body. If it's been known for a long time now that if you just move somebody through 3D space in VR, instant motion sickness, especially if there's any kind of rotation. But if you give them an environment that doesn't move, then they can sort of reference themselves, and it just reduces it greatly. However, I mean, it's a matter of personal taste. Like, I love Battlezone. That's my go-to game in PSVR. It's probably my favorite of all the ones that we played. My brother played it, instant motion sickness. But he's brand new to VR.
Yeah.
So I think that there's definitely either a matter of getting your VR legs, or there's just thresholds that everyone has to find for themselves.
And we can tell with the mirroring that some of the games do blinder effects. Or you can play in VR, and I think VR does increase the immersion significantly.
Move around a lot is a lot more fun than watching them use a gamepad, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's VR, even single-player stuff that doesn't involve the audience, is still it can be a communal activity because it's a ton of fun to watch people interact with VR. Because you watch the TV, you're seeing what they're interacting with, but at the same time, you're watching them move their body and engage with this 3D space. It's something kind of new, and I think people will probably dig that a lot. But the actual, when it transitions into everybody's involved with actual social experiences, I mean, that's where this is going to shine. Because unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to try out the Playroom VR experience because it hasn't been released yet. But that's the one time
where it's trying to add those frames in based on your movement data. It wasn't uncomfortable, and the smoothness is all there in the headset. It definitely checks all those milestones necessary, all those benchmarks necessary for presence. But the game developers are going to have to choose. I think, obviously, we would prefer most games be rendered natively at 120 FPS.
Well, yeah,
una fotocopia al DNI o algo.
They're timed exclusive. The first-party ones are definitely going to be only for PSVR.
Yeah.
Like, is it worth? You have a PS4, but is it worth putting another $400 to $500 in just so you can get those social experiences in your living room?
Well, if you have a Vive or a Rift, you probably are well equipped to answer that question. If you don't, if you haven't touched VR yet, and you have a PS4, I would say this is a no-brainer. I mean, I'm so psyched about VR, even given the shortcomings of the tracking, which I still hope can be tweaked in software updates. What does work is still fantastic. For a $400 or $500 investment, this is the cheapest point of entry by far, and it's going to get you, a lot of what everyone else is experiencing. So that, for sure, I would say definitely. If you already have one of the other guys, you just be ready for to have to, give away a little bit of the tracking fidelity. And in exchange, you get a very comfortable headset that is in your living room that has probably a lot of software coming out for it. I have been very excited for the PSVR because it's that mainstream push. There's 40 million PlayStation 4 owners. And PC gaming has been on the decline, whereas console gaming is very, very popular. And I'm excited that VR has this kind of mainstream backing.
In some ways, it reminds me almost of Nintendo and how like the Wii and the Wii U weren't necessarily the most technically impressive of all the console systems, but it was on the strength of their developers and the advantage of the social experiences that those games brought.
Yeah. I want to see, do they sell out? Yeah. Is there a huge push for this thing? Is there a rush? If it's impossible to get this holiday season, that's going to be a great thing for VR. And it's going to be a good thing for people who own it because it's going to mean more people are going to be putting in development hours and investing in the platform.
Yeah. My biggest fear, though, and those are my hopes, my biggest fear is that Sony can't improve on the tracking with software, with improved algorithms, that the one camera is all you're going to get, and this is the best they could do for tracking. So maybe patches will come that will help with that, or it's going to have to be on game design.
The trouble with this problem is that it's not something that the game designers can fix. This is at a lower level. This is at the platform level. So yeah, it's up to Sony to find a way to fix the tracking issues. We saw some of these earlier in the year, and the developers were telling us that they understood that they were there and that they're working on them, and we hope to see them fixed by now. But there's just too much, lack of accuracy. And the problem is that translates to motion sickness. And motion sickness is just that elephant in the room with VR.
Yeah.
It's always there. Developers are always aware of how far can they push that. And if the developers aren't in control of whether or not the player gets motion sick, that's rough.
Yeah. So there you have it. First day review of PSVR. Just the hardware. We're going to be checking out more of the games as they become available to us. If you have questions about the headset, please place them in the comments below. We'll have far more VR coverage this week and going forward. Thanks so much, Jeremy, for reviewing the headset with me.
It's a blast.
And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.